this computer. Great, we are recording. Okay, so the context is that this is about our cascading settings framework, which has documentation, which is very exciting. Thank you, Drew Blessing, for writing this documentation. Currently in GitLab, I think we have like 5 or 6 features that are known as cascading. And the idea of a cascading feature is that the setting is available at the instance level, which has a default value. It's available at the group level, where there is no default value, and it's available at the project level, where there's no default value. And so if the value is not set on any entity, it like goes up through its ancestor chain to find the closest ancestor that has it set, and it uses that value, which is a performance problem. Like it's the design of the feature is that you want to be able to set something at a higher level and have that cascade down to the children. But because we're doing that by allowing nulls on the lower values, instead of actually cascading down the values to the children, we're doing this lookup every time we go to look at the value of the setting. And so I already added a cascading setting for duo features, but this performance issue, I had to like change the query count on some n+1 tests because I introduced an n+1 because I used cascading settings. So that's kind of the background. So I have a draft MR open where instead of relying on this nil value and then looking up the ancestor chain, I want to set the value on the children. So when the parent sets the value, you like set it on all the children, which is potentially its own performance problem. But then at least after that point, you just look up the value on the actual record. I don't have to care anymore that a project's ancestor has a certain value because I just look at the project itself. And I'm doing that here via this method, where this was pretty much just me trying to do the easiest thing possible, which is in the namespace, because the setting is on the namespace settings table. And when it's updated on a group, this doesn't deal with the instance level setting yet, but on a group, I find all of the children of that group, all the projects underneath it and all of the groups, and I update the setting value to match the parent. Yeah. So the current questions I have for you, and I asked these to Terry and she had some answers, but I'd be curious for this group's opinion, was one, what is the best way to look up all the subgroups and projects within a group and its subgroups? I was surprised that there wasn't I'm sure we do this somewhere in the GitLab project. I could not find a finder class or other place where we do this. Terry pointed me to namespace integrity index worker, but this looked at namespace.children and then namespace.projects, which is basically what I'm doing. This seems like potentially an n+1.
So I think the way we do those like whole hierarchy queries is with the traversal IDs column on namespace, which I think we touched on a pairing session a few weeks ago with Brian.
Yes, we did discuss that.
So but we kind of go where project ID in, and then we have a namespace traversal subquery that gets all of the namespace. All the namespaces under a group.
It's called self and descendants.
Yeah.
I think I looked at this method when I was doing this. Why is search like this? Okay. Self and descendants. This is not the best place to do this. I always should just search in my editor, but I'm trying to do this here. Self and descendant IDs or self and descendants in the linear traversal?
If you want to object, that's yeah. the second one.
Great. So self and descendants. Ooh. Return super unless used traversal IDs. So this super is up to the group class, the namespace class.
This might be a specialized case one, the linear. I don't know what that does.
You always use traversal ID now. Because it used to be that we used the tree-based kind of data structure before we started storing the arrays of traversal IDs. So that should always be true in 99% of cases.
We should always be using linear traversal.
Yeah.
Okay. So the self and descendants super unless used traversal ID is used. Let me just look this up really quick. Traversal ID is present. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see.
Used to be a feature flag in there as well, but yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Open this up here. I'm done with GitLab search for now. Self and descendants. And so this goes to the lineage, which goes here. And then we have a lot of stuff. This should return the namespace's lineage. So this is the IDs of all children and all child groups and projects.
No, just child groups.
Just child groups. Okay.
Yeah, and if you look
Oh.
on line 270, 271, 272, I think that was the stuff we were looking at with Brian, where there's that weird array comparison query.
Yes, this is bringing me back. Okay. So self and descendants gets the IDs of all child groups. And then what if I wanted to get how to get the IDs of all projects within the parent group and child groups?
There's another method called all projects, which gets you all projects, but that's a separate thing.
It's a method called all projects.
Yep.
Okay, let's look up that. This is actually, by the way, I saw that somebody did a demo of asking AI questions, like basically what I'm asking you, like asking this to AI, like where would I find a method that does this, like using human language? And it was pretty cool. It worked
Nice.
in the demo question. I don't know. We're working on pieces.
Cool.
So this would be a namespace.
Yep.
All project. There it is. Self and descendant IDs. So this calls self and descendant IDs. Oh, and then there's project where namespace. Okay, great.
That's one way of doing it.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if I called both self and descendants and then all projects, that would give me the groups and projects. Okay, that's great. I'm reading a comment here, so I can find my way back here. How to find all projects for a root group. So let's say I'm using this, and maybe we should just update the code. Why not? While we're here. So let me open up this update service. So what I had here, I had group projects finder. What does that use? So this finds what is this doing? My little zoom is in the way. I can't quite see. Used to filter projects by set of params. Is this doing the same thing as all projects is my question. So far
Probably
I can't
not.
tell. No,
That's all in
It's-
super again, I think.
super.
Probably is to find projects within a group.
Projects within a group. But isn't that what all projects does as well? Or you mean only the ones that are directly in the group, not that are maybe in child?
Not sure. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I think you can do additional filtering and whatnot.
It has some additional filtering, which yeah, I was looking at this. Okay, I guess we can probably just use all projects. That's probably better, right? I can say like group dot all project, and then subgroups would be group self and descendants. Great. I think that will work based on what we just discussed. So then I have all of these, and then the question I have is, I'm just doing a setter here, right? And this came up in Slack. Tom, you were in that conversation, so you saw me asking how. I was like, this namespace settings update, namespace setting update service is kind of a weird one because it assigns attributes. And I thought that like there was some magic somewhere that was saving the record, but it is not saving the record. So this only sets attributes. So in any tests for the namespace setting update service, it's just saying like, were these attributes assigned? It doesn't look at persistence. And that is because groups, this service is only called by the group space, the group service. There's so much inheritance here. Handle namespace settings is actually defined in group space service. Here. So this is called by the, so when you're updating a group, we update the namespace settings. When the group is saved, the namespace settings are also saved because of Rails autosave association. So the question is, maybe this is the wrong place to do this update that I'm trying to do on all of the children, because, for example, this isn't in a transaction, right? So if I were to say project setting save, but then the parent failed to save, the parent project failed to save, then this cascading would be all messed up, right? Because the wrong value would have been cascaded to the children because the parent didn't persist.
Yeah, but also transaction reminds me that if we have a very large group with lots of subgroups and projects, a transaction isn't the best either. Because it will take multiple seconds for the whole thing to finish, and then while that's happening, it locks the whole group. So usually, yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know what we'll do in this case, but usually we end up having to background these kinds of things. Yeah.
Yeah, and Terry, I asked Terry about that. I said, like, is there a good test? Because I know when we're testing changes, like database changes, GitLab, testing it for the GitLab org group production data in database labs is kind of the recommended path, right? Because we have a pretty large group with a complicated hierarchy. And so she did do that and she said it was fine, but I know we have customers who have like much bigger hierarchies, right? Like tens of thousands of projects or something.
Hundreds, actually. Hundreds of thousands.
Hundreds of thousands. Okay.
Yeah.
So how would you, like, per Tong's comment, do we just assume that we have to do this in a background job, or is there some limit we should try to test to see how long it would take?
It's the problem is that it's unbounded. That's the more fundamental problem, is that there is no limit to how many projects you can have and how many subgroups you can have. So eventually our customer will reach 1 million. And then what? And then having this deep within a service, it's going to be a surprise to anyone who uses that service. Yeah. So
can you remind me, sorry Jesse, I've forgotten, like where's the top of the hierarchy tree for a setting? Is it on the instance?
Yes, this doesn't address when the instance setting changes. That will have to happen separately. But yes, there's an instance level setting, and then group, and also project level setting. And it's
Oh, so you're only looking at cascading from a group down.
in this MR, yes, exactly. And so whenever any group at any level changes this value, I want all of its children to match. So you could change the setting in the middle of the hierarchy, right? So your top level group has a setting set to true, and then you go into like a middle subgroup and you set it false, and you want that to cascade to all the children of that group.
Yep.
Yeah, the instance level will have to be addressed as well, which would definitely be a background job situation. Which maybe is a good justification for why we should already build a background job for this task, right? Because we're going to have to do it for something else. Okay, you've convinced me.
I've got another question.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you just answered it, but like the first question I thought of was, what happens if you've got a group and that group's got 3 projects and there's no setting on the group? Does this cascade to projects or not?
It does, yes. Project.
Yeah. So say you've got 2 or 3 projects and none of your hierarchy has any setting. They're all null, except for one of the projects has actually set a custom setting there. And then you go and change the setting on a higher level group. That's going to clobber the setting on the project, right?
Yes.
And that's a desired behavior?
Well, it's not what we have today. So today it would not clobber the child. And some might say that's unexpected, because when you have something called a cascading setting, you assume that, like, I guess the challenge that we have today is that if a customer wants to reset the setting for everything, they don't have a way of doing that. And like maybe they would expect cascading settings to do that. So this is changing it so that that's what cascading settings does. It does not do that today in the current implementation of cascading settings.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that's something. I don't know how we go about documenting that behavior, because if somebody's curated a setting all differently through all of their projects, they might get a bit of a shock.
Yeah, I think that's right. This is the namespace setting this is the concern that we use for these cascading settings, and I was going to show you. Yeah, so it only does a write to the attribute if it's nil. If it's already set, it does not cascade it currently. Which we could keep it that way. There's nothing preventing us from keeping it that way. But the keeping attributes nil is what's resulting in this n+1 problem.
Yeah, and that's why I was thinking about it, because I was thinking this task of like backfilling the whole tree is easy if you're going like if it's nil. But then the problem is so the first time you do it, it's fine, right? You'll go and you would fill them all in if they were nil. But then the second time, you can't check whether they're nil, and you've got no way of knowing whether the setting has cascaded or not from the group, unless it's different to what the group setting is currently. I'm probably not making any sense.
Yeah, no, you are making sense. You are making sense. And I think that's right. If the child doesn't match the parent, then you know it didn't inherit the setting because it's been different. But I think the idea here, and I'll validate this with product because it's kind of a product decision, right? Or a product concept, is like, would a customer expect that kind of cascading, or would it be like, oh, you just overrode all of my, my special settings? I wanted them to
feel
be all
like it might
different.
It might be 50-50.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Is what we want. There is an open issue for this. Let me just see if I can quickly find it. Do. I don't know if I'm actually gonna find this. Yeah, allow groups to re-inherit parent settings. So this was somebody opening this issue because they found it was unexpected that the child didn't have their setting clobbered.
Right.
But you know, I see one thumbs up. It's like probably me. No, it's the person who wrote the issue. So you're right, we should validate this before we just go around changing it, that we want that. Because we could easily write it so that it doesn't clobber. If the setting is set, then just leave it as is.
I mean, probably ideally you'd have an option to do both, right? There'd be a checkbox
Yes.
saying
Yeah.
overwrite all children, or like only overwrite
Mhm.
unset.
I mean, and there is this cascading settings has this concept of a lock. So you can lock a setting, which means that you do not allow child objects to be different from the parent. So
Right.
that's one way that's done. But some people want some children. I mean, this is all for AI features. So the idea being some customers want to make sure that like they have AI features on for everything except for their one super special secret project, right? They want turned off for that. So we want to be able to have some difference. Okay, we'll move forward assuming we're in a clobber, but then I'll definitely check in on that, whether we want to do that. So where should we then write this background job? If it's not going to, it can't be an update service because update service doesn't do anything but set attributes. Would it be in groups update service? Like here? After update? Probably. Something like that. Does this make sense? Does active record 30 know about child changes? Does this work? I guess I'd have to be group namespace settings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you look inside update to affect the requirement of subgroups, it's very similar.
Oh, there it is. Oh, okay. Awesome. Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
pushes it to async as well and everything. So
Oh, great. Okay. That's great. So this was already this problem somebody solved. So schedule, I'm just gonna like write the code. I mean, with all of you, but it's just to kind of work it out. So we schedule this background job. Maybe we'll just match those settings, return settings. We don't want to return if. And this is if settings, previous changes include settings, doer features enabled. Oh, you just pass a symbol here.
looks like it.
Looks like it. Yeah, I'm interesting. And then like Cascade namespace. Cascade to features enable the worker. And thing group.id. Okay, so I can remove this. I mean, this is a really bad name, sorry. Let me just say, let's change this. It's bothering me how wordy it is.
Should we DIY those two methods? Kind of the same.
These two? Okay. How would you do
Maybe, I don't know.
Nah, you need three.
Nah.
You need three. Duplication. It's fine.
I'm a huge fan of duplication.
All right, carry on.
Huge fan. No, I see what you're saying, but and certainly one thing I'm thinking about with this is so I'm updating this behavior for just this one setting that's cascading, but we have a bunch of other cascading settings. So the question after we make this work this way for this cascading setting is, can we extract the behavior in a way that we can do? Because like right now, the way that this framework for cascading settings works is this module that adds a bunch of callbacks. This is nice because it's really easy to use, and there's even like a handy rake task for adding a migration that adds a cascading setting. So it's like super easy, but also some would argue that like meta programming plus callbacks equals disaster in terms of code that's easy to understand. Certainly, I had to read this module several times before I even understood what was happening.
Yeah, it looks like something from Rails.
Yeah, it's definitely taking full advantage of Rails callbacks. Yeah, a lot.
I would say let's not derail this thing with it, but also it's kind of feature envy, those two methods. If you look, it's like get the settings and then do this with the settings and then do this with the settings. And then like it's all about the settings and not about this class. So maybe it should be over there. Oh, I don't know. It's a service class.
In the service, but this service class doesn't know. This doesn't do the saving of this object. So that was the thing I brought up before, that if we invoke the background job here, we don't know if it was a success, if the group saved successfully.
Right.
So I mean, I agree with you. I don't see anywhere else we could call it except in this after update, but that's just because, my brain is limited. I'm sure there are other options. Do you have ideas for other places?
Oh, well, just, yeah, I wouldn't worry about it now, but it's like, does that behavior belong on the namespace settings object rather than in here? But
you could add a callback to the namespace settings class and do like an after update and call this there, right? And actually, that would make it so that we could call it in this cascading namespace setting attribute concern. So it would be more reusable, but I don't know. What do you all think?
no, I don't know.
We recently talked about not using active record callbacks anymore. If you remember. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's my preference. And yeah, we had a long, very interesting conversation about it. And like, I would love if we moved in a direction of not using callbacks at all. But these are, like, yeah, it's much harder to test if it's in a callback. It's also like hidden here. Like, so you invoke groups update service and then somewhere there's like a background job scheduled and you're like, where did that happen? It's like hard to know why certain things happen. So I don't prefer it, but
yeah. So the practical concern is that because we have this performance considerations, if we put in a callback, most of the time it gets done as a synchronous callback. And then after a while, we wonder, hey, why is the simple save taking so long, and so on and so forth. And then we do the simple thing of moving to a worker, but then we don't have control over when the worker runs. And then we add more conditional logic to say sometimes we do it, sometimes we schedule it, sometimes we don't. And then it becomes this, really hard to debug performance problem. So explicitly calling it from service is definitely my preference because of that.
Yeah, I think like what I'm trying to propose is simpler than that, in that like if instead of what you have on here, if line 117 said group.namespace settings dot update two-factor requirements for subgroups. And then you move that method over there.
Yeah.
That
Mm-hmm.
because it's kind of, that's where that behavior belongs.
I see.
Sort of.
Yeah, sorry, but that's the responsibility of model layer. It's
yeah, okay.
Yeah, this is adding a method to that class because it's
But yeah, I think the thing is, like, this is the group. It's the group update service, not the namespace settings update service, right? So that's why I feel like it's.
Yeah, is there a namespace update settings service then?
Don't know.
There is, but it doesn't actually update the namespace settings.
Oh,
it
that one.
just sets attributes. Yeah.
Oh, this is the one where this is where we came
And
from.
we're back.
Yeah. It's all full circle. It's all full circle. Yeah. So if we wanted
Well,
to
that
just go
is kind of
wild.
messed up though, right? That is kind of messed up that we're going namespace update settings service, which calls the group update settings service, which updates the namespace settings.
The functionally, there is no difference between a group and a namespace setting, right? The only reason why we did that is because someone decided, hey, we're just adding all these underscore enabled columns on group. Can we split that off, please? Yeah. So, but then we didn't change the service thing. So yeah.
Yeah. Is that why? I mean, you, Tong, have a lot more context, I think, on the namespace stuff. Like, because one interesting thing I learned in the process of doing this work is that, for example, at first I wanted to add this setting for projects on namespace settings. So I was like, well, projects have namespaces, right? Like groups have namespaces, users have namespaces, projects have namespaces. So I'll use namespace settings for all of those entities. But then I realized that actually we don't create namespace settings records for projects on create, but we do for groups. And so I use project settings instead.
Right.
Yeah,
I think that's Charlie. She probably knows more than that. I think that's unfinished work, the project namespace settings. Yeah.
It was meant to be.
Yeah.
But I do think one additional benefit or idea for using namespace settings is like, well, users, groups, and projects all have settings that they probably want similar settings. So this allows us to add it to all of them. Although I guess the question is then why not put on the namespace itself? Why does it have to be in this like settings object? And that I don't have an answer to.
I think one thing that happened is that when we update the group object itself, it takes, especially within a transaction, it logs that group, and then other people can't update the group anymore. Something like that. That's just a small consideration. I think the bigger thing is that we're just adding columns to the group table without thinking about whether it's related to the group or not. And the same thing was happening to project. So it was getting hundreds it was getting there, hundreds of columns.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of like another bucket to put things in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but we continue using group update service to update the group settings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
So
that's
maybe
how
we could
it
do that.
evolved. Yeah.
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 One day this will call save. I'll be so happy when that happens. Okay, so for now, I think it sounds like we're all aligned with just keeping this in here. You're right, this is really more about settings than about the group, but we can keep this here for now. Just as a way to move forward, and maybe we'll reconsider that later. So should we write a worker? Oh shoot, I just forgot. This is supposed to be EE only. Ooh. Hold on.
Just put a comment
No.
saying EE only.
Okay, you're right. Only do this for enterprise, please. I'll just assume that's how coding works. So app workers. Is there where should I put this worker? Seems like disallow two-factor subgroup workers is just like its own thing. It's not namespace, but maybe we should put a new worker in like a namespace settings. There's a namespaces. Should we do that, or should we just name it something random? How do you all go about the naming piece?
Is there a namespace in EE app workers? Potentially.
Namespaces. There's no namespace settings.
Namespaces as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody wants
Namespaces is fine.
So you would namespace it. You would.
Namespaces is fine.
Okay.
I know in a bounded context working group, we're gonna unify a lot of these top level namespaces anyway. So even if we create a namespace settings thing, we'll probably unify it back to namespaces. Yeah.
Oh really? Okay. Cool.
You should probably put it in the EE folder though, right now.
Okay. Okay. App workers, namespaces. I was looking at the names of those other ones. It was interesting to me that like the names were like prune, process, update. I probably update duo features enabled worker.
Cascade.
Cascade. I like that. Okay. I'm gonna have to open another worker because I don't know how to write one without looking at another one. How about this one? Great.
I'm sure you all already know this, but I found out about the frozen string literal true setting the other day because I know that was preparing us all for a future default in Ruby. That we would eventually be able to like stop having to write that at the top of every file. Well, it turns out that Mats has decided it's never going to be the future default.
Why?
So,
I have not heard
I
this.
can't remember the reasoning, but so for forever now, we've got to write that if we want support for a feature that's never going to arrive in the future. Kind of interesting.
Kind of the worst. I hate it. Wait, so it's never, is it, so we were getting ready
I
for the
think
future.
it was never. I'll try and find the link, but
Okay. This is
Tom, you
valuable
probably know off the
information.
top of your head.
Yeah, Tom.
I'm sure.
No.
Tell us about
No.
string literal.
No, I'm not
Matt.
Matt.
Hold on, I'm going to put this in my notebook of things Tom doesn't know because it's a short list.
Nice.
No, I don't know. I don't know a lot of things. Yeah.
I don't know. You knew about Self and Descendants. You knew about all projects.
Yeah, those things have whacked me a lot of times.
Okay, so we're starting to work on this worker. Now, here's a question. I guess this feature category. I like always forget where to look up feature categories. Where do you look them up? AI something. There's some like YAML file somewhere with feature categories. Does anyone know where it is?
I don't remember.
Config.
In config? Config features. So I don't know, Leslie, are you here? I can't see in the group. Oh yeah, Leslie's here. We have this is a relatively new thing at GitLab, like the past few years, that because we have a monolith, we label the feature category of our different files, tests. Anyways, I never can remember the names of the feature categories, so I always have to look it up. So it's in config. I think it's not AI research. Is it Duo? AI abstraction layer, that's it. Very bad feature category name. It should be different, but whatever. AI abstraction layer, which basically means this is a general AI feature. What about all these things? Where would we go? I'm tempted to just copy this. It's not the greatest thing to do. Should I look up the documentation to look up which arguments we should use here? Or any other suggestions? I think we're gonna need that.
I'm probably running out of time, so probably copy it for now.
Okay. I'll leave a comment. Said I could just copy these, so don't worry about it for the code reviewer. And we'll need a perform method, which is gonna work. Group ID. We could actually just do the settings. No, we need the group ID because that's how we're gonna have to look up the children. And then I'm going back here because I'm looking at what we did before, which is that we get the groups in the project. So group equals group.find, group ID. Oh wait,
Spelled find wrong.
Oh man, thank you. Duo features enabled. It's going to be group.duo features enabled. Oh yeah, I did have a question about whether we're introducing a race condition. I'll get into that in just a second after I copy paste this stuff. And then are we gonna do, these are gonna be like in batches instead? Right, we don't wanna do each through these. Also, I don't wanna save them all at the same time, or each, do a write for each one? Okay, I think that's. I mean,
Probably
this
do it.
works.
I'd be tempted to try and do it as a single query, but
Do the save as a single query? Or do the whole update?
like, yeah, do the whole update for a batch. We can't do all of them, but
Okay.
I don't know.
How would you do that?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Yeah.
That
Each is probably the safest.
yeah.
Yeah, like if we take, yeah, and let's say if you take a batch of 100 and then you do update all, then you end up locking the 100 rows and any rows in between. Yeah.
So update all would lock rows and rows in between. Another question I've noticed, by the way, that I feel like we do update all in a lot of places because that bypasses validations, right? Like even if the projects are invalid, it would still let them save. I can never tell if that's like good or bad that we do that, but I notice we do it a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think each is the safest? And then we just save each one? We just do a write for each one?
Mhm.
That's fine. Okay, that's good. So here's my question about erase condition. If somebody goes through and updates their project twice, they go enable dual features enabled and then disable, we will enqueue this job twice. And no? Not what I'm saying
Yeah, I
now.
mean, I'm nodding and agreeing with you that there's a race condition saying no, this
Okay.
is terrible news.
So that's what that deduplication does. So if somebody updates the group twice, it will deduplicate and only run the background worker once. But only the arguments for the worker matches exactly, right? So
They would match because it would be for the same group. But
well, yeah,
then
but if they unset it and reset it, that's one. And then we have to think about subgroups. I don't know how, which would take precedence in that case. But yeah, that one's a little bit more gnarly.
yeah, and I mean, yeah, some of the most difficult to debug problems I've encountered have been race conditions related to background workers where we run things in unpredictable order and then the data gets out of sync. And you're like, why is this happening? You're like, oh, the background job. Somebody updated this twice. So, but Tom, when you said it deduplicates based on the arguments, are those the arguments to perform?
Yes.
So it would be the same because we're not passing the new value of like it would always be invoked with just the same group ID.
Yeah, should work. At least for the from that group onwards. Yeah.
But then wouldn't that be a problem? Because if I am super fast and I click enable and then disable, and then the job starts running as soon as I click enable, would it set the cascade to be for the children to have enabled when I've already disabled it?
So what happens is that the worker, actually you don't have to be super fast, right? Let's just say you set it.
You're saying?
you can actually, what you can do is that you set it to be enabled, and then the worker runs, and then it takes a while to run, let's say, and then you set it to be disabled. So the worker is halfway updating all these children to be enabled, and then you set it to be disabled, and then we have to wait for the first worker to finish setting everyone to be enabled, and then another worker comes in and goes. Another worker is scheduled in the middle of this to presumably disable everything. What happens then? Does it get deduplicated? Yeah, I think you need to look into whether it's until executed. So in this case, you want that next worker to execute as well and not get deduplicated. Ah, that's annoying. Because you want the next worker to go, hey, set everything back to disabled.
Yeah, like I want it to run the second time and to run once the first one is finished, right? Wait till the first one's finished, then run the second one.
Yeah.
I do have another racy question, which is I'm lost already, but when this worker gets called, has the group already saved, already committed or not?
Yes.
It has.
Yes.
Cool.
That's why we put in after update.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and this after update method, which calls if it's been a success for group save.
Sweet.
But there is another race condition too, which is if the child, so if a child group changes the setting, and that would be a different argument, so it wouldn't be deduplicated. But what if the
Yeah.
child gets processed before the parent?
Yeah. These kinds of things is where like the argument becomes someone has to take a look, and that gets really annoying. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. But to deal with this, let's just scope it within the same arguments for now.
Okay.
But if you want to kind of quickly jump to the sidekick docs to look at the
Yeah.
there's two options for deduplication. One is until executed and one is until executing.
Are you looking at the GitLab sidekick docs?
Yeah,
Or this is sidekick? Okay.
GitLab, yeah.
Okay.
So if you look at the deduplication section.
Deduplication. Sorry, my little Zoom window is like in front of everything. There we go. There it is. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's support two deduplication settings until executed.
So which one do we want?
Use the until executed. I think we want until executed, right? Because we don't want to skip the second one. We want to let it. Oh, hi, Malcolm. We want to remove, so it can use to prevent from jobs running simultaneously. Oh, you can pass reschedule once.
Oh, that's useful.
That's useful. Although, like, I don't think in this case we would want to do that because you could theoretically update settings many, many times, right? Not just once, but it's cool that that exists. I don't see, this is the issue. I don't want to dig into the code right now. What do you all think? You think that we should use until executed?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, and what do we have? Haha, nice.
Okay.
Okay. Including scheduled, what's that? If you want to do duplicate scheduled. Oh, we would never have jobs scheduled in the future for this, right?
No. Oh.
Oh, hi, Young. You and me, Leslie. Reading these sidekick docs. Okay, feel good about that. This is fine. Ensuring. Okay. Yeah, I'll have to write some tests for this code. It's gonna take me a while. Cool. Well, we're almost out of time anyway. I feel like we're at a good stopping point here in terms of we wrote a worker. It has some arguments. We are happy with our deduplicate. I do think that putting this in a background worker introduces new challenges. I kind of wish we could just keep it in line, but I also, at least we have to worry about data integrity or race conditions, but we don't have to worry about performance. So I guess that's a fine trade-off for now. Hopefully we can add logic to this worker that means that we don't have to worry about race conditions as much as possible. Cool. Well, thanks for coming, everyone. This was fun. yeah, I'll post the recording and put it in the channel. Let me know if you have any other thoughts on any of these topics.
Yeah,
Educational.
thanks. It was super interesting.
Bye.
Bye.